Is there anyone who, I saw somebody raise a hand, but I lost you. A gentleman right there with the first hand up. Right, yep. Just state your name, please.
Darrell Perry. I actually filed a yellow slip to speak on Article 2, 3, and 4. I actually just have a question about these. Why were these articles placed in this order when during the school board hearing last month they were listed at the very end of all of the articles?
That's what DRA told us to do.
Who is DRA?
The Department of Revenue Administration. And I agreed with their advice. I mean, I'm not passing the buck to them. That's what I thought should happen, and that's what they told us to do.
I would like to...
As to where they were placed for the public hearing, that's traditional. Usually the public hearing is the last day to file petition articles, and we have always put petition articles at the end of the board articles.
I would like to make a motion to move all petitioned articles to the end of the ballot.
I would rule that motion out of order because the warrant article is as presented by the board in the school district. So I think that motion is out of order, first of all.
I would like to challenge the ruling of the chair.
Okay, then you need to make a motion to do so.
I am motioning to move all petitioned warrant articles to the end. You called it out of order, so I'm challenging your ruling. So I'm motioning to challenge your ruling.
You need to have 50%. Did anybody want to discuss that motion?
Call the question.
Well, there's going to be discussion. Sir, I'll recognize you.
Conan Soliday, 132 Kennedy. Articles 2, 3, and 4 are specifically written to come after the Keene District budget. I was told that they would come in the order after. Otherwise, the way that they're written, they'll conflict if, say, for example, 2 was to get sufficient votes, and so was Article 5, then there would be 2 budgets, and they would conflict. The way that they're written, they have to come afterwards.
I'm not sure if they would conflict, but I think I'll recognize Mr. Wrigley to speak to that.
Whether the board's budget article is going to conflict with your articles no matter what, given that yours don't have a default budget and the boards do have a default budget. I mean, this is more complicated than it needs to be legally, but there is the risk of 2 budgets no matter where we place them, and DRA wanted our budget article last, probably for the reasons that you wanted yours last.
If any of the petition budget articles receive sufficient yeses, they will, the way that it's written, they will overrule any previous budget. And that's why they're placed behind the Keene District budget.
Point of order.
Point of order is well taken. If I can just make one comment. The subject of discussion right now is the motion to overrule the moderator. Let's focus on that. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor of the motion to overrule my ruling that a motion to rearrange the warrant article is out of order, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Nays have it. Now, does anyone here want to move Article 2 into anybody want to second that? I didn't hear what he said. Mr. Roberts moved Article 2 to be on the warrant, or to be on the budget, or to be addressed today. Now it's subject to amendment, and all those in favor. Well, I got to vote on that motion.
The state RSA say that the right to have a warrant article on the ballot shall not be infringed by RSA 32. There's nothing in RSA 39 or 32 that permits the amendment of a warrant article placed on the ballot by petition.
I disagree.
Can you cite the RSA that allows amendments of warrant articles placed on the ballot by petition?
Give me a couple minutes and yeah, I can.
While Mr. Wrigley is looking that up, I'd like to call a voice vote on Mr. Roberts' motion to place Article 2 on the floor for discussion. Is that your motion, sir? Yes. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Is that a nay, Mr. Parent?
No.
Okay, go ahead. The ayes have that motion.
I move to amend Article 2 as follows. Shall the district recommend on strictly an advisory basis that the Board of Education expend $62,333,572 for items encompassed in the operating budget, regardless of the amount of the operating budget which is authorized by the district under Article 5. And I'd like to speak to this.
Is there a second? Then you can speak. Ms. Zott, second that? Go ahead, Mr. Parent.
The way this is written, if this passed and Article 5 passed, we would more than double our property taxes. That is absurd. This motion as written is not well taken. It is irresponsible. What this does is gives people an opportunity to say that only $62,333,000 should be expended, but that it is advisory only and it is up to the board. I think that's appropriate. I am also confident that it is legal because it does not change the subject matter. And that is the intent of this, is to make it an advisory matter and not contradictory to the existing budget article.
Mr. Wrigley, you have an answer?
Yes.
Please.
RSA 40:13, section Roman numeral 4 says warrant articles may be amended at the first session subject to the following limitations. There are 3 limitations. None of them apply, but the 3 limitations are warrant articles whose wording is prescribed by law shall not be amended. Article 5, for instance, is prescribed by law. Warrant articles that are amended shall be placed on the official ballot for a final vote on the main motion as amended. And the 3rd limitation, no warrant article shall be amended to eliminate the subject matter of the article. An amendment that changes the dollar amount of an appropriation in a warrant article shall not be deemed to violate this subparagraph. Mr. Parent's motion, in my opinion, does not change the subject matter, and I'm confident a petition article can be amended and is frequently amended.
And I concur with that, so your motion is out of order.
How is that in compliance with RSA 39:3 that says the right to have an article inserted onto the warrant conferred by this section shall not be invalidated by the provisions of RSA 32?
Your petition article has been placed on the warrant, and today's the day that if Mr. Parent's motion carries, your petition article will be amended.
But it changes what 25 registered voters signed to place on the ballot.
As long as it doesn't change the subject matter, it's perfectly appropriate. It's subject to amendment today. Let's move on. Just say your name first.
Conan Soliday.
Okay, thanks.
The amendment is to change it to an advisory warrant, if I understand correctly.
If I understand correctly, it keeps the same number and changes it to an advisory basis. That's correct.
And what exactly does that mean?
That means the board can consider it as advisory.
Okay, so doesn't it change the subject? Doesn't it change the nature of the warrant? There's a specific number, a specific budget. It's not. I mean, it's plain as day, and it's not asking to be taken as under advisory. It's specifically saying the budget shall be $62,333,572. And it should be completely legal if it was placed in the correct order. As it is, as he mentioned, yes, it does conflict with this Keene District budget in the order that it's in.
It's perfectly legal where it is, in my opinion. I mean, people can vote on it or not.
Except that it specifically says, it shall overrule any previous article relating to the next operating budget. So if it comes before the Keene District budget, there will be 2 budgets. If it was to pass, there would be 2 budgets, and yes, the people would have to raise money for 2 budgets.
That's your interpretation, but perhaps a better drafting job would have solved the problem by deleting the word previous. But Ms. Zott, go ahead.
Just for your information, when we got these budget articles, we went to our lawyer, we talked to the Department of Revenue. They've never seen anything like this. It's the board's prerogative to put the articles on the warrant in any order they want, but we can do that by law, and we did that on purpose. That's why we did it.
Because you want it to fail.
Exactly. Definitely want it to fail.
There you go.
I do.
Exactly.
Because that.
All right,
Yeah.
we don't have to have a shouting contest here or another kind of contest.
We'll double our tax rate.
That's not the intention to double the tax rate.
Sir,
You didn't
Mr.
write it
Roberts,
right.
I recognize Mr. Roberts.
A question for the school attorney. When we put a number, say on Article 5, and the voters passed Article 5, except for contract requirements, other legal requirements, the remaining part of the budget is open to how the school board wants to spend it. So if we want to change line numbers left and right, so in a certain effect, if we have $20 million over, this community is saying you have $20 million and you leave it up to school board how to spend that $20 million because the voters can't tell us how to spend line by line by line.
That's correct.
Thank you.
With all due respect, I think the issue here is these three petition articles should be amendments to Article 5. And this goes in the wrong direction, but you properly submitted the petition, you had 25 valid signatures, they're placed on the warrant, and we're dealing with the cumbersome issue that these should be amendments to Article 5.
And that may be the proper way to handle what you're looking for when the time comes. Is there any more discussion on Mr. Parent's motion to amend Article 2? Seeing none, I'll move the matter to a voice vote since we don't have a request for a ballot vote as far as I know, do we? No, okay. I'll read the amended article, or the article subject to the motion to amend. Shall the district recommend on a strictly an advisory basis that the Board of Education spend $62,333,572 for items encompassed in the operating budget, regardless of the amount of the operating budget which is authorized by the district under Article 5? All those in favor of the motion to amend, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Ayes have it.
Oh, come on.
There'll be order, please.
Move to restrict reconsideration of Article 2.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Ayes have it.
Yeah, I gave it to them and Article 1 got shut down.
Article 3 is another petitioned article. Is there anyone who wants to speak to that petitioned article? Preferably the author of the petition? Mr. Saladay, please proceed. Let him go first. Oh,
No, I have a motion to amend.
well, let him move the article first.
Yeah, I'm wondering.
Is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. The ayes have that one too. So the Article 3 has been moved for discussion, and I'll recognize Mr. Saladay to speak to that article.
Article 3 is written in the same manner, but requires a 1% reduction from the previous year's 2013-14 school budget, bringing it to $61,710,236. If this article is approved by the district shall be only allowed to make cuts to non-instructional programs. If anyone got the Keene annual report, on page 3, the instructional programs come to $33,628,806,000, includes regular instruction, special education, vocational programs, and co-curricular. Those would not be touched by this warrant. Only the support services and the would be touched by this particular warrant. Also, if this article passes, it shall overrule any previous warrant article relating to the next operating budget. Again, the order in which this warrant would show on the ballot is very, very important.
Mr. Parent.
I move to amend Article 3 so that it reads, shall the district recommend on strictly an advisory basis that the Board of Education expend $61,710,236 for items encompassed in the operating budget, regardless of the amount of the operating budget which is authorized by the district under Article 5. Same reason as amending Article 2, but this one is for Article 3.
Hold on, is there a second? Go ahead.
What they're saying, I won't even get into the substance. This should be advisory. What they should have done is exactly as Mr. Wrigley stated, is if they wanted to change the amount of the amendment, they should have come in to amend Article 5. This is an absurd procedure and a waste of everyone's time, and they don't understand the law, and it's irresponsible. I would ask that this be approved.
Mr. Perry, I have a card from you that was submitted earlier. I don't know if you still want to speak to Article 3, but you've indicated you do.
I raised the same objection that all of this is out of order.
Okay. Does anyone wish to speak to Mr. Parent's amendment? Motion to amend. Anybody have any comments at all about this subject? Seeing none, we'll move this to a voice vote, because there's no request for a secret ballot on Article 3. The motion is to amend Article 3 to read, Article 3. Shall the district recommend on a strictly advisory basis that the Board of Education spend $61,710,236 for items encompassed in the operating budget, regardless of the amount of the operating budget which is authorized by the district under Article 5. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Ayes have it. Article 4. This is another one submitted by petition.
Before we do, I move to restrict reconsideration of Article 3.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Ayes have it. Mr. Roberts. Is there a second? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Article 4 is moved to discussion. Mr. Saladay, do you want to speak to Article 4?
Just that Article 4 is written in the same way as Article 3, except it requests a 5% reduction from the previous year, bringing it to $59,216,893. Also, it cannot come from instructional programs. It can only come from non-instructional programs. If this article passes, it shall overrule any previous warrant article relating to the next operating budget.
Okay. Mr. Parent.
Move to amend Article 4. Shall the district recommend on strictly an advisory basis that the Board of Education expend $59,216,893 for items encompassed in the operating budget, regardless of the amount of the operating budget which is authorized by the district under Article 5.
Is there a second? Go ahead.
I don't need to repeat myself.
Does anyone wish to speak to the motion to amend Article 4? Seeing no one wishes to speak? The motion is to amend Article 4 to read, shall the district recommend on a strictly advisory basis that the Board of Education spend $59,216,893 for items encompassed in the operating budget, regardless of the amount of the operating budget which is authorized by the district under Article 5. All those in favor of the motion to amend, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. Ayes have it.
Move to restrict reconsideration of Article 4.
I'm here to motion to restrict in a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. Nay. Ayes have that one too. We're still on Article 5. Are there any further requests for amendments to Article 5? Mr. Freeman gave me a card. If you want to be recognized now, it would be a good time.
Yeah, Ian Freeman, Keene, 63 Emerald Street, would like to propose that the proposed budget number be reduced to $58 million, which I think it was just several years ago. And I share the gentleman's concerns earlier about the amount of taxes in this town pushing families away, pushing productive people out. people.
Hold on a second. First of all, you spoke too fast. What's your motion?
The motion is to change Article 5's proposed number to 58 million.
So the operating budget going forward would be $58 million, not the number in the budget.
The first number in the budget, yeah, change that to 58 million, please.
Okay. Is there a second? Second. Motion being made and seconded. Please, you may speak to it.
Yes, as I pointed out, I've lived here for several years, and I recall, I think maybe when I moved here in 2006, it was around 57 million, but it's certainly been at this level in recent history. The increasing taxes in this town are driving people out. I share the earlier gentleman's concern. It's very difficult for people to move to Keene. It's difficult for people who live in Keene to stay in Keene unless they are very, very wealthy, and I share those concerns, so I'm not going to re-echo them.
Are you all set?
I think that's it, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Roberts.
I'm not going to support this motion, and for a lot of people that know me, I've been quite frugal with the budget, especially over the past 2 years. Last year, I had proposed a level-funded budget, and they came forward, and we only increased it 0.5% because of all extra costs. This year, we had a revenue of $58 million, and we brought in 56. So I had made the motion that all they could spend was $58 million. So basically, it was no increase whatsoever. But due to the $800,000 in special ed costs, that's what the small increase went to. And Mr. Panzer and some of the other ones would probably admit, I care less about the percentage of the budget going up. The budget going up 0.5% last year and 0.79% this year, to me, is totally immaterial. Because when we look at 0.5 from last year and we look at 0.79, basically rounded up 1.5% increase in the budget over the past 2 years, because of other factors and other revenues coming in, it's between a 12.5% to 14% increases in taxes. That's the number that I look at. So basically over the past 2 years, with the numbers that have come out of this board, is basically level funded except a few minor changes. And so we've cut a lot. We've cut the $2 million surplus. Quote, we had a $2 million surplus. That's what they had to live in with this year. And then when you had all the other contracts, the other retirement costs, and all that came in, that basically wiped out that $2 million increase. So basically over the last 2 years, this board has not granted the administration any money, really any money to increase. They have found ways, and sometimes I know they don't like, and they give me some nasty looks, but they have found ways to live in those cuts over the last 2 years. And plus another one, you have to look at 3 ponds. When you go at 58 million, we have about $5 million in transfer funds. And to good accounting, so you don't keep it off the books, if we're getting Medicaid, we're getting free and reduced lunch money and other money from the government, and that's $5 million, you have to count that as revenue, and then you count that as an expense. So we could wipe out $5 million by not taking any outside funds. If we say we're not going to take any Medicare, we're not going to take any money for the lunches and all that kind of stuff, then you got your $5 million right off. To me, that doesn't make sense, because if we do that, then our children are going to have to pay a heck of a lot more for school lunches, and other things would fall out. And so this is it's a really, really tight budget, and I'll end up to giving an example. While Mr. Hopper says we're looking at approximately a $1.8 million surplus, in New Hampshire, we have an expenditure budget and we have a revenue budget. The people here vote on the expenditure budget. And I think right now we're down to only about $358,000 left in the expenditure budget. Even though we've had $1.4 million extra in revenue, because the voters of Keene said you can only spend this amount of money, that $1.4 million has to go back to the taxpayers as a reduction in taxes. And in case anybody, I think there's really only one qualification to get around that, is if special ed costs go through the roof, we would then have to come to the community and ask if we could spend some of that excess revenue money or anticipated revenue to cover the cost of special ed, so we would not start next year in a deficit cycle. And so that's why I do not support this, will not support it, because this board has been really, really tight over the past 2 years, and there's a lot of board members who really want to spend more on education, and the money isn't there. And one quick one that I whispered over to Mr. Donegan this morning. Personnel costs 67%, special ed 7.5%, debt 6%, SAU 2%. 80.5% of all the money that we raise and spend are in those 4 categories. So if we want to cut extra millions out, we have to find that millions out of that 19.5% left that we get to educate the children.
Ms. Zott.
I agree with Chris. Just quickly, we all agree, most people in this room want to educate our kids, give them the best we can, and we all agree our taxes are very high in Keene. That is why we have a strategic plan. That is why we have a bond that is going to close the school, and it's going to fix the schools, and it's going to fix what we need to fix, fire, safety, and everything, and we are going to continue to save money. So if you want to see your taxes go down, vote for the bond. If you want to continue to see your taxes go up and continue to come in here and have people make motions like this to slash $5 million from the budget, then let the bond fail, and this is where we're going to be for years and years to come. So that's all I have to say.
Yes.
Not to mention, we talk about people leaving this community. Well, people will also leave this community if we don't have strong quality education. And I used to recruit to this town, and one of the first questions people would ask me is, Howard, tell me about the schools. And our schools, this budget allows us to continue to be providing strong education to our schools. Going to 58 million, no thank you. It doesn't, it will be abundantly clear to people that are considering moving in here that this is not a community that supports strong education. So I'm not going to support the current amendment.
Thank you. Any other comments about the motion on the floor? Yes.
George Downing, 24 Hamden Drive. I think an amendment like this is incredibly irresponsible and a waste of all of our time. Without having a budget in front of the people making this amendment and going through and saying this is where you can find your $5 million savings, it's just a number that's drawn up from nothing, from anecdotal experience that, hey, one time we spent this much money, let's do it again. It has no bearing on reality. It completely cripples the school board, it cripples the administration, it cripples our schools. No one here who cares about education should support this amendment.
Any other remarks about the motion on the floor?
I was going to call the question, but may not need to.
Question called. Now you're on ballot question D, please. Mark your ballot, yes or no, as to the motion. Place it in the box, and we'll proceed from there. Thank you.
Could you read the motion again, please?
I'll read the motion again. It's to change the operating budget figure to $58 million in Article 5.
Would you tell us the letter? D as in David.
D as in David. Yeah, thank you. District. If we could call the meeting back to order, please. The motion to amend the operating budget to reduce the operating budget to $58 million fails by a vote of 15 yes and 75 no. We are still on Article 5. I'd like to recognize the gentleman right there.
Joseph Mirza, 50 Summit Road, Keene. Okay, the Mr. Saladay's and Mr. Freeman's proposal They reflect the fact that we're seeing fewer students. I understand that might change soon, but, and we're seeing, in spite of fewer students and a troubled economy, in those two contexts, we're seeing tax increases. Now, I understand that 3.2% is what we're going to see if item 5, either whether Article 5 passes or not, and then if Article 6 passes, that's going to raise it up to what, 6%? Is that right? Taxpayers are going to see a 6% increase this year, right? If Article 6 passes as well, right? So here we have, and what we don't have, I think it's really, there are two things. One thing is the increase, and one thing is the current level. And so I thought it was very honorable of the district to show that in all cases, high school, middle school, and elementary school, we are higher than state average. Okay, and it's also at the same time, we have more economic problems apparently than many of the places we're comparing to. So there's less income here to support a higher tax rate, and so that's a leveraged effect, especially when it's increasing, right? So one of the things we need to see, which we don't have yet, is a history on all these things, really 4 numbers. And you don't have them today, but before the vote in March, you might put them in the paper. We should see the number of students, like say from 2000 to now, how it moved. We see the cost per student from then to now. And while we've said that our cost per student is high, and we're putting a dent on it with this bond and the employee savings there, we haven't really identified what are the components that are causing us to be higher per student, okay? So that's our level of cost as opposed to the increase of cost. So there seem to be 2 problems here. All right, so and the other part would be, how has the community's ability to pay changed? So here we have, let's say we have the per student cost going up year by year, but the median income of Keene going down year by year, population of Keene going down year by year. So this is, while I can see from the people talking here that you're doing something you've never done before, which is like trying to contain this, we don't really have enough information right now to see whether you're doing a good enough job, like which way we should vote here. So we need this information before March. We need, have the employees changed, and I'd just like to remind you that taxing authority, we have the people just have to, not me, I rent, but my building pays, so it affects me, but I support education and I support this community, okay, and I want this to be affordable. But your power of taxation is forced on people. You have a monopoly here. You're the only place students can go for free, and the accountability in schools is not the accountability that most people have to face in their jobs. Most of the people don't have tenure, things like that. So it's you really if it's what I think that the median income is flat to down, but the employee income is rising every year, you're giving the community a very, very hard time, and you're causing the flight, okay, as well, okay. And I know this is not all your fault. This is partly town council also. Town council has to get more good jobs here, so that we can afford our schools. But it's but you do have a role to play here, and I'm happy to see that that this seems to be changing, that you're more aware of these kind of things. But we do need more information. I could be more clear about this to you later if you want.
Thank you. Are there any more remarks, comments, amendments to be made to Article 5? Your mic's not on.
All right, now, maybe it is now. Just with the, I'm just going to address the kindergarten thing because I think I want to make sure we understand. We have seen an increase on some levels in our kindergarten growth. Right, this year and in the year before, and we're going to see a little bit of a dip next year and it may go up somewhat. But these are the new highs of the new low. We are never going to get back to the numbers that we saw beforehand, and people need to understand we are seeing some growth in our in incoming students on some levels, and a lot of that has to do is people are moving into this area, into Keene, from out surrounding towns because we have a transportation system, we have human services that can meet their needs, and those are some of the situations we're seeing. But what I want to make sure people clearly understand is that this is the new high of the new low. It's not going to get back to the numbers that we've seen in the past.
Mr. Perry?
75 Leverett. I would like to motion to amend Article 5 to read, shall the district recommend as advisory an operating budget of $63,255,581?
I think that's an out-of-order motion. It can't be advisory. That's an illegal motion. I do not recognize it, and it's out of order.
Why is that motion out of order when it was not out of order to change the other budgets to be advisory?
Because it was inconsistent with the budget article. And had your article passed, we would have two, the way I understand DRA's interpretation, we would have two approved budgets which would be added together. That was not your intent, as I understand it.
Right, but it was not deemed to be changing the context of the previous article to change it to be advisory, so how is it changing the context of this one to make this advisory?
I don't think that's what I'm saying, sir. What I'm saying is...
That's exactly what you said.
Well, listen carefully now. What I'm saying is that it's an illegal motion. We are required by state law to pass an operating budget with a default component. That's the end of it. It's out of order, and then we're moving on. Anybody else want to speak?
I would like to challenge your ruling.
Sure. Do you want a secret ballot on that vote, too?
Secret ballot on all votes. That's what was petitioned
Point of order. Your prior ruling
I was going to get to that, Ted.
Right.
My prior ruling is that any substantive matter that will affect the budget on March 11th will be voted on by secret ballot. This is not a substantive motion. It will not affect the ballot. It's whether I'm going to be overruled. Now, we'll take this by a voice vote, please. All those in favor of the motion to overrule the moderator, please say aye. Aye. Nays? Nay. I think the nays have that one. Is there any further discussion on Article 5? Sir.
Conan Solity, 132 Kennedy. I would like to propose an amendment, a motion to Article 5 to change the figure of 63,255,581 to equal last year's operating budget of $62,756,947, and to state that this is equal to last year's operating budget, the 2013-14 operating budget.
Okay, just to make sure I have you right, you want to change the number to the operating budget to be $62,756,947.
Which is equal to last year's operating budget.
Okay.
Second?
Who seconded it? Second. I just didn't see it. Okay, thank you. Ms. Zott?
Just to clarify, that's a $498,634 cut.
Let me raise a problem with the wording of the motion as presented. Let's see, what are RSA 4013 Roman 4 sub A states that warrant articles whose wording is prescribed by law shall not be amended. Now, you can change the number, you can't change the language. So I suggest you redo the motion just to say you want to reduce it to 62,756,947. And in your marks in support of the motion, you can say it's the same as last year's budget or whatever you said it was. Because I don't think you can add that language you want to add. You can change the number, but you can't add the language.
So I can't say that this number is equal to last year's budget.
In your argument, you can, but I don't think you can change the wording that will appear on the ballot.
I don't see how that changes the nature of the ballot.
That's not the point. The point is that the statute says you can't change the wording prescribed by law.
But you can change it to advisory. I get you. Okay, so
Okay, I'm glad you do.
I take back my motion. And
So it's withdrawn.
I'd like to put forth a new motion
Please.
to change the number, the first figure, to $62,756,947.
Okay, is there a second? Second. Got it. Mr. Parent.
I'd like to speak against this. It's irresponsible. There's nothing behind it. It clearly isn't going to pass. I think it's simply a time waster. I think the intent of these people is to make us stay here as late as possible just to annoy us and to hold up the system. We all had other plans this afternoon, or at least most of us did, and they'll be canceled, and we'll stay here as long as we have to. And with that, I call the question.
Before you call the question, I want to hear from anybody new. You made the motion and you argued for it, so does anybody want to speak in support or against the motion?
Nicholas Ryder, 725 Marlborough Road. I just want to thank people like Mr. Salata who come out and become involved in a system that they were previously not involved in, and he's done a lot of work toward that. I would support a reduction, mostly because I am a new homeowner in the area and watching my taxes go up over the past 9 to 12 months, I'm concerned about the sustainability of this community. And if it continues to go up as it has for the past 5 or so years, again, I am concerned about the future of my property or people who would want to move in here in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Kelly Cook, Keene, New Hampshire. I just want to indicate that I hope that people will vote against this. I think, again, that it has not been well thought through. I think the board and the school administration have spent many, many hours deliberating on what would be an appropriate budget, and if they've thought this all through, now all of a sudden they want to throw in new numbers. I don't think that's fair to the board. So I would hope that people will vote against this. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to, Mr. Parent called the question. I respect that, and now call the question. The motion is to change Article 5 to $62,756,947. And if you support that, circle yes on ballot question E as in Edgar. If you support no, circle no on ballot question card E. Thank you. If we could have the meeting back to order. The motion to amend the operating budget to $62,756,947 fails by a vote of 14 yes to 74 no. Are there any other comments about Article 5? Seeing none, Mr. Parent.
I move to restrict reconsideration of Article 5.
Okay, since this is a non-substantive motion that does not affect the warrant article to be voted on March 11th, we will do that by, oh, thank you. We'll do that by a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Now, Article 10 is submitted by petition, so I would open the floor to the person who submitted the petition, if that's what we can do. That'd be great.
Conan Soliday 132 Kennedy. I'd like to propose Article 10 and speak on it.
Is there a motion to put that on the floor for discussion? Is that what you just?
Put it on the floor.
Just move to put it on the floor. You're done.
Got it.
Is there a second? Okay, Mr. Roberts has seconded. Okay, Mr. Soliday, go ahead.
Shall the district remove the authority from the school board to appoint new members to fill empty seats? All new members to the board shall only be appointed through the official electoral process. I'd like to speak on that.
Why don't you speak on it, and then I would like a legal opinion from council on the validity of this petition, but that's another point because we're going to vote on it anyway.
Gotcha.
Go ahead.
I don't believe that the school board should have this power. I think that it should be left in the hands of the voters, even for a couple of months or whatever. It makes it even harder to get new blood on the board. because the process now is a buddy-buddy picking buddies. I'd rather that the voters had all the say. Thank you.
Mr. Wrigley, are there any legal problems with this petitioned article?
Both the statutes and the school district charter provide for the school district to appoint a member to fill a vacancy until the next election. And this body has no authority to overrule the statute or the charter, so a vote on the article as written would be advisory only, and it should be directed to Concord, not here.
Mr. Moderator, I move to amend the article.
Okay, proceed.
So that it reads as follows. Shall the district ratify the authority of the Board of Education to appoint new members to fill empty seats until the next district election?
Do you want to speak to that?
Point of order. That completely changes the wording.
Hold on. Mr. Parent, do you want to speak to your motion?
Yes, I believe that this is a legal modification. It keeps the same subject matter, which is the requirement. It does not have to support the same end as it does, so long as it supports the same subject matter. I believe my opinion will be buttressed by the opinion of the district council.
Point of order. His motion is completely out of order because it totally changes the wording and intent of the article that was signed by at least 25 registered voters
who aren't here at the district meeting to support their version.
Wait a minute, Mr. Parent. Mr. Perry, the motion is not out of order, and it will be voted on by this body. It doesn't change the subject matter. In fact, it goes to the authority of the board that your petitioned article tries to remove. So I disagree that it changes the subject matter. Well, thank you for that. Does anybody have any other comments? Mr. Roberts.
If we know it's illegal because we're not a home rule state, and even when Keene went to change its charter before to change the date of an election, someone had to go up to New Hampshire, to Concord, have someone put in a bill, and the House, the Senate, and then the governor had to sign for it just for us to have the ability to vote to change our days. If this is basically against the law, why would we have something on the ballot that's totally against the law? Because it's here by petition. But I think what the article will do will have no legal effect. So it's a waste of space, in effect. But it's petitioned, it's going to be on the ballot, and we'll vote on it. If it's approved by the voters, nothing's going to happen. Mr. Coates.
And what I think Mr. Perrin is saying is that if they want to have change, then they need to go to the right places to make that change. And over the next year, it allows us to do our business as is.
If it's an illegal warrant, why don't we just leave it the same way that it's written and let the voters vote yes or no on it? And
the reason for that is because Mr. Perrin has a right to make a motion to amend, like everybody else here does.
And the other thing is that I don't really want to spend a lot of extra money for attorney's fees. I'd rather make it clear so that it isn't going to be illegal and there isn't going to be some big court fight about it.
Mr. Tonkinson. All right, any further comments with respect to Article 10? Seeing none, I'm going to call the motion. And we're going to do this by secret ballot. And we're on ballot question G, as in gopher.
Point of order, if you support my amendment, you would vote yes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can we repeat the amendment?
Let me read that. That's a good point. Mr. Parent's amendment is to amend Article 10 to read, shall the district ratify the authority of the Board of Education to appoint new members to fill empty seats until the next district election? A yes vote is in favor of that amendment, a no vote is not. Because somebody's asked to do it. All votes that affect the substance of the warrant. If I may have your attention, the motion to amend Article 10 passed by a vote of yes 61, no, yes 61, no 16. So that motion carried. Mr. Parent.
Move to restrict reconsideration.
Of Article 10, right?
Yes.
Is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Article 11 is a petitioned article as well. Mr. Saladay.
I'd like to put Article 11 on the floor.
Go ahead.
Shall the district remove the authority from the school board to suggest yes or no on added warrants, meaning the school board must remain completely unbiased on all ballots and documents? The right of individual school board members to voice personal opinion shall not be infringed upon.
Do you want to speak to that?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Again, I don't believe this is a power that the school board should have. I think that if they have an opinion, this is the time they should voice their opinion. Most people don't come to these events. Most people don't watch these events. And so the voters go to the ballot box and they see these for the first time. And it's a bunch of long-winded legalese and whatnot. But they skip down to the bottom and they see that the school board recommends yes on this. So I think that's unfair. I think it's unethical. I think it should be removed.
Mr. Roberts.
I disagree in two ways. There's been numerous times where there's been members of the school board who've sat here and did not agree with what the board suggested. And so if it's a 5-4 vote, it's what the board suggested and the people go in and express their opinion. But there's another part which is extremely legal, and it opens up the school board to unfair labor practices and stuff. Anytime that we have a contract negotiation, it's brought to the school board in closed session, we go over it, we debate it, then we take a vote. It doesn't matter whether it's 5-4. By law, the 4 people cannot come out of that closed session and talk down that contract that the board voted. Because we're not individuals. We're representing the school district and we're representing the board. And otherwise, we could be going into an unfair labor practice because you just can't do that. And so when those are legal contracts, that is told with one board voice. And that's why I can't support this.
Mr. Moderator, I have a motion to amend.
Can I ask you to hold on one second about that? Mr. Wrigley, what are the legal implications of Article 11?
Again, it is a requirement from Concord that the board on money articles recommend yes or no. Not on the budget. The board's budget is presented in Article 5, for instance, here. But on any other money articles, the board's recommendation is required, and if you want to change that, go to Concord. This group has no authority to change that.
Mr. Parent.
I move to amend Article 11 so that it reads as follows. Shall the district ratify the authority set forth in RSA 32:5 to recommend a yes or no vote on all special warrant articles involving an appropriation? And I'd like to speak to that briefly. I think that the
Can I have a second first? Second. Okay.
I think that this is another one that is not well thought out. There's no legal research done. It is probably illegal, but rather than waste the district's money defending something or arguing about an issue, it's better to just remove it as an issue. This would do so. There is nothing wrong on the way that this is written now. It is the board's duty under as given by the legislature, and I would urge everyone to vote yes on my motion to amend.
Okay. Any other comments about the motion to amend Article 11? Mr. Freeman.
Yeah, do I need to keep introducing myself every time I come up?
For purposes of clear minutes, it would be nice if you did, yes.
Okay, then I would hope Ted Parent will continue doing that as well. Ian Freeman, 63 Emerald Street. I think it's interesting that Mr. Parent has accused these people of wasting everyone's time, but yet he's the one who's putting in amendments.
Let's try not to make this personal.
To all of the petitioned articles, which essentially waste not only the time of the people at this meeting, but also the dozens of registered voters who took their time to put these petitions on the ballot.
Do you wish to speak to the amendment on the motion on the floor?
I would oppose Mr. Parent's motion.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, I'm going to call the motion. Again, we have to do this per request by ballot. We are now at ballot question H, as in hooray. So if you support Mr. Parent's motion, and I'll read his amendment again, shall the district ratify the authority set forth in RSA 32:5 to recommend a yes or no vote on all, quote, special, close quote, warrant articles involving an appropriation? A yes vote supports that amendment, a no vote does not. Thank you. The motion to amend Article 11 carries by a vote of 14 no to 60 yes. Mr. Parent, do you want to make a motion?
Move to restrict reconsideration.
I heard 2 seconds. All those in favor of the motion to restrict reconsideration of number 11, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Article 12 is a petitioned article, and I would invite the sponsor of Article 12 to step forward and speak to it, please.
Second. Article 12, shall the district refund all year-end unassigned general fund surplus to the taxpayers as a deduction from the next property bill and not be carried forward to the upcoming year's school budget? I understand that this school board already does this, the district already does this, but I would like it if it was better indicated what the surplus was each year and what the voters were getting back in the form of whatever the surplus was. Just like the whole idea behind laying out budget increases by, this is if you have a $100,000 house, this is how much your taxes are going up this year. If there was a line item maybe on the tax bill that says that you're saving this amount of money due to the surplus from the previous year.
Are you all set?
Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Moderator, I have a motion to amend. I'm sure you're shocked at that.
I'm speechless. Go ahead.
I move to amend it so that it reads as follows. Shall the district ratify all current statutory and other authority with respect to surplus funds at the end of the fiscal year? I think that this would be a very bad idea, the way that it was originally worded. It ties the hands of the board, even if there are unanticipated contingencies. Also, if the board had an IQ above room temperature, which I think they all do, they could figure out how to get around this easily just by pre-buying stuff. So I don't think this makes any sense whatsoever. The board has been responsible. It also contradicts the thing that we just talked about. So would ask you to vote yes on my motion on to amend Article 12.
Can I hear a second? Okay. Any further discussion on that, on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to the next ballot.
No, you got to vote on my motion to amend.
That's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
I'm looking for my ballot. It's question I, as I'm getting hungry. Yes, ma'am.
A written vote, if they would allow this to be a voice vote, to save time?
Well, we have 2 separate requests for all articles to be voted on by ballot, so that's already before us.
Just one.
No, we have 2. They say the same thing. So you have 10 plus different people, some of whom may not be here now. Ballot question I. Yes if you support the motion, no if you do not. The motion to amend Article 12 passes by a yes vote of 59 to a no vote of 11. 59 in favor, 11 opposed.
Myself, and nobody knows who I am. Ted Parent, 242 Beaver Street. Move to restrict reconsideration of Article 12.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes carry the motion. All right. Article 12 is also petitioned, and I would invite the sponsor of that article to speak to it. I'm sorry, 13. Go ahead.
Shall the district repeal the Boards of Education's authority in accordance to RSA 198:4-B that allows the board to retain year-end unassigned general funds in the amount not to exceed 2.5% of the current year's net assessment?
Okay, do you want to speak to that?
Again, I don't believe that the board should have this ability. I think that it's a big old blank check. I know they say they're never going to do it, never going to use it, but, you know, years from now, some board member might decide to retain that money. I think that if they do need money for whatever reason, it shouldn't be any problem to bring it to the people and have us vote on it at the time. I think this should be repealed.
Mr. Parent, wait 1 second. Mr. Wrigley, is there a legal problem with number 13?
None.
Okay. Mr. Roberts.
I don't support the Article 13.
Well, Mr. Roberts, that's not the point right now. It's going on the warrant, but let me recognize Mr. Parent.
I move to amend Article 13 to read as follows. Ted Parent, by the way, 242 Beaver Street. Shall the district ratify the Board of Education's authority in accordance with RSA 198:4-b, which permits the Board of Education to retain year-end unassigned general funds up to a specified amount for purposes of emergency or to reduce the tax rate? And if I hear a second, I'd like to speak briefly to that. I think the board has done a good job with this. By the way, if you pass this, it contradicts things that were passed before. And as I said before, it would allow the board to do some screwing around and pre-buy things and stuff like that anyway. It would be ineffective. The board is responsible. If you think a board member isn't responsible, vote him out of office. That's your remedy. I would urge you to vote yes on this.
Mr. Roberts.
Two things. The first one to the amendment, was the amendment an unspecified amount, or was it still the if it's unspecified amount, can we have an unspecified amount, or do we have to have that 2.5%?
I guess I'm confused. We're talking about Article 13.
Yes, because I heard the amendment. I wasn't sure if the amendment said an unspecified amount. And if it... Okay.
It's to ratify, yes, it's to ratify the board's current authority, and that's my understanding of how it's worded in current authority.
Okay. And the second part is what the petitioner stated is incorrect. You have to have money for the board to call a board meeting for people to decide whether they want to spend the money or not. If we do not have the ability to put 2.5 million up and 2.5% up, and there is a problem, if there is no money available, that money, the board has to take that money out of current revenue, and then we would then have to reduce expenses in other line numbers to pay for that emergency.
Mr. Harper.
I had encouraged the board last year to put this on the warrant, and of course it was passed by voters. Where it would really come in handy is as a budgetary tool for the board, because the uses of the funds in 2.5% of the current fiscal year's net assessment would be roughly $750,000. Such fund balance retained may only be used to reduce the tax rate or for emergencies to be approved by the Department of Education under RSA 3211. In particular, with the tax rate, it could be helpful because in a year where you have an unusually large surplus balance, if you can put some of that money aside when you aren't likely to repeat that surplus the following year and bring it back to kind of the following year to kind of smooth out the roller coastering of the tax rate, can be very handy as a tool. A few years ago, we sold Keene Middle School, the old building on Washington Street, for $1,350,000. And taking in that revenue caused a large surplus, which caused a roller coastering the next year when we didn't have another building to sell. So this would allow some ability to kind of smooth out that roller coastering.
Thank you. Any further comments about the motion to amend Article 13?
Yes. I'm actually going to speak against the amendment. I would remind everyone that this particular authority is something that was granted to the board by the voters. and it can be taken away by the voters. But the only way that it's going to come up is through a petition article. The board is not likely to recommend this itself, so should the voters wish to take this authority away, it would have to be a petition. Personally, I've got no problem going back to the voters for all the same good arguments that Mr. Harper just explained, but I would not amend this.
Thank you. I don't see how any of the amendments that Mr. Parent has brought up they have all changed the nature of every one of these warrants. And this one, let the people decide. It was voted on last year. It passed. This repeals it. Let the people decide again. And if it fails, it fails. But the ratifying and whatnot, it changes the nature of the warrant completely. It doesn't have anything to do with the original warrant.
May I
Mr.
respond?
Parent, yes, I'm ruling it's the same subject matter, so I don't know if that matters
look,
at this point.
I thought SB2, which is what set up the system of the first session and the second session, was stupid when it came into place. I predicted that the default budgets would in almost all years be greater than the regular budget. I was right. It's a foolish system, but it's a system that we have, and I am making motions within the system that we have that are appropriate and legal. I would prefer to go either to an autonomous board or at least to eliminate SB2, but that's not where we are, and so I think it's reasonable to do this. I understand Mr. Murdo's opinion on this. My concern is that it is so confusing that the board, and that there are so many other issues on the warrant, that I would prefer, since it was just passed last year, let it go, and I would urge people to vote yes on my amendment, and to ratify the current authority, since it's only been 1 year.
Mr. Tonkinson.
As a former finance chair of this board, I'm sure Ann will agree with me with John's comments that having this ability would lessen the roller coaster effects that occur and make a difficult budgeting process. My question is for Mr. Wrigley. If Ted's amendment should pass, which is, so I also understand what Mr. Murdaugh says, that, the people gave, the people can take away. What are the ramifications of a no vote on, forget today, let's say Mr. Parent's amendment passes today to ratify, and then it goes before the voters in March, and people vote no, we don't ratify it. Is there then, does that mean that people want to repeal the authority? Likewise, if this amendment, if this article stays as written and people vote no on it, or people vote, you see what I'm saying? I mean, it creates a no vote in any situation creates a massive headache. So let's keep it simple. What happens if Ted's motion today passes and in March people vote no?
If someone from DRA is here, they'll make the ultimate ruling, but my opinion would be that if Ted's motion, if Ted's amendment goes to the ballot and it fails, I would give an opinion to DRA and to the board that the authority we got last year stays in effect.
It's not specifically repealed.
It's not, okay. And, okay, thanks.
I think Mr. Freeman was up next.
Yes, so Ian Freeman, 63 Emerald Street. I'm personally pretty tired of having basically unaccountable bureaucracies rule over peaceful people's lives and constant threat of violence against folks if they don't want to go along with this system. And I don't appreciate lawyers being able to tell everybody how to live. And so if anybody out there is sick and tired of that, like I am, I invite them to visit the Keene Liberty Alliance.
You're out of order. This is not a forum for political activity. You're out of order, sir. You're out of order.
Thank you very much. The Keene Liberty Alliance.
You're out of order. I'm going to call the motion on that last note. This is ballot question J.
I still have.
Oh, I didn't see you there.
Eric LaRoche of Keene.
doesn't this amendment completely gut this article, considering that a yes and no vote at the ballot does nothing? Here, there's an action to take place should this article be voted in favor of. But if the amendment goes through, there's no action at all. So it's completely changing the subject of the article.
I disagree. The motion, or the original petition, seeks to take away the board's authority on a point, and the amendment is on the same subject with respect to that authority, so it's the same subject matter.
But the amendment makes no, the board retains regardless of what happens at the vote.
Well, nobody's presented an article that says specifically that the board's authority granted last year, and I don't know what it said last year because I can't remember that far back, but nobody's presented anything today for this meeting that indicates affirmatively that that authority granted last year is to be revoked. So, you guys wrote the petition, you're in charge of the language you use, and you get the signatures on it, it goes on the ballot. Today we're just amending, and we're trying to make it clear that this asks the district voters to ratify the Board of Education's authority in accordance with a certain statutory provision which permits the board to do certain things.
But this is
and if the voters say no to that, then there's an indication that they want to consider changing their minds about what they granted last year. And then it'd be up to someone else to put an article on the warrant next time around to take the authority away, but that hasn't happened yet.
But then couldn't it just be reversed again and ratify, and it does nothing? This is an article to repeal. The amendment is to do nothing.
It's on the same subject matter, in my opinion. And
the action is completely different.
That's not the point. It's the same subject matter. So I'm going to call the motion, and we're going to have a vote by secret ballot. I'm going to call the motion, and we're going to have a vote. Ballot question J. I just called the motion. We're voting. The results on the motion to amend Article 13 is 51 yes and 11 no, so the motion carries. Mr. Coates.